Hi, I'm Skyler. I'm 15 years old.
Most teens live on the internet. Skyler Lee's no different.
Here's my dog. His name is Nugget.
But his posts have a sense of purpose,
I've been working out.
wise beyond his youth.
Yeah, this is my first video log in my online journal of my transitioning from female to male.
When Skyler was very young, and then she came to me, he came to me, and he was sad. And he told me that, Mom, I know this is my body, but I don't feel like this is my body few times. I didn't understand at that time. I didn't get it.
Joanne Lee, a Korean immigrant, admits she spent a good portion of motherhood lost in translation.
I feel like, okay, if they are going to graduate and then they are going to go to college, and then I'll be fine. But that was not true.
What Joanne didn't understand was that her two children were not the daughters she thought they were.
No matter what I wore, no matter what I did, it never looked right when I actually looked at it in the mirror.
Avi, the oldest, says he knew at age 3 he was transgender, but didn't tell his mom until high school.
It was awful. Definitely made me never want to come back to Madison.
Avi moved to the East Coast.
I went back in the closet also.
And Schuyler came out in high school.
I didn't know how to react. My upbringing made me to, this is not real.
But it was more than real, it was everything. Schuyler even found a way to get
I
testosterone.
get my first shot of tea tomorrow, which my parents don't know about, so I have to speak kind of quietly. But things are going good. Things are moving along really quickly.
I'm a nurse, and I thought maybe he changed his mind, so wait until 18. But they cannot wait.
Future, good luck. I hope things go well and continue going well for you.
Hey, sup, it's Skyler, and this is my 1-month check-in from when I started transitioning.
After only 3 doses of tea, Schuyler's voice deepens.
My voice has been cracking.
And he picks up on something else as well.
I'm still noticing like social changes and how people are talking to me and treating me in my early days of transitioning, because it's very new to people.
A lot has happened since my last video.
Schuyler chronicles his transition on YouTube for 6 months.
I don't know, I'm still excited about the changes that are happening.
His once upbeat spirit changes dramatically.
I feel like I've been getting more uncomfortable around people.
He was definitely unhappy.
No matter how much I change, they'll still see me as a girl. And that's like hurtful. Feeling kind of lost. But we'll see what the future holds.
I'm sorry, Skyler. I'm really sorry. I miss you.
Schuyler's future was short-lived.
I'm really sorry that I didn't give me the love you deserve.
Just as he shared his life online, he shared his goodbyes there too. His note posted to Tumblr after he had already ended his life at a park.
He wrote, "Suicide is not beautiful." And then he asked us as a parents to fight. Their pain is immeasurable. It is, that I didn't know. Now I know. I want to help the parents who are in the same situation like me. It is the lifeline. They accept who they are.
Joanne once thought Schuyler was too different, but now she knows all he wanted was the same love.
My Skyler wants to show me he exists. He is valid. I never gave it to him. I'm really sorry, but I cannot change it now. I learned now, but it cost me my child's life. I'm so sorry.
Now, Skyler would have been 17 this month, and though his story has tears, he wrote in his note he did not want to be a sob story and did not want to be a hashtag. He was a fierce activist in LGBTQ and racial justice issues, And for that reason, we have started to continue that conversation online with young people, parents, and professionals. It's meant to serve as a resource for the community, whether you're working through your own gender issues or just want to have more understanding. Hi everyone, you are watching a News 3 Extra on gender identity issues in our community, and we really hope that this is a resource for everyone in the area, teens, parents, and just good friends. So I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out to come and visit us and to talk about these really important issues. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks.
Let's start with Schuyler, because Skyler's story, I know he does not want to be a sob story. He doesn't want to be a hashtag, but I think it's okay to have tears about Skyler's life. Do you guys want to start on just saying a memory about Schuyler or what Schuyler did for you?
Well, for me, just occasionally, Skyler would show up at my doorstep with a bouquet of flowers just because he wanted to. And he'd show up with cookies, we'd go downtown. He was just really a fun person to be around.
Schuyler loved flowers, right?
Yep.
And animals.
He was crazy about dogs. I think I will remember Skyler for the work that he did, and the way that he really taught me so much about what it means to be an activist, what it means to be an ally, especially when it comes to race. He really taught me a lot about what it means to be an ally to people of color, and that's something that I'm going to carry with me for the rest of my life.
I think my favorite memory with him was we were in the guidance office at lunch for one of our meetings, and we were making posters, and we just spontaneously got into a mini glitter fight, and so that's probably one of my favorite memories.
What did Schuyler teach us about race in this gender discussion?
Skyler taught me a lot about intersectionality, which is like when a person's identity is composed of many different parts, like their race and their gender identity and their sexual orientation and their socioeconomic status, and like a whole array of different things that we can identify, and how those things can really intersect and change the way that we interact with others in spaces. And so I think that to Schuyler, it was really important that he was a trans person of color. I think that was a huge part of his identity.
Because Schuyler felt like he was even more isolated. And I think about the Korean culture. The Korean culture really is a closed culture in a lot of ways.
Working with Schuyler at GSAFE and being a mentor to him, I know that it deeply impacted him that he couldn't see himself reflected in the people that were in his life. I know that he had maybe one or two like Korean queer adult friends to look up to, but other than that, he didn't really see that in his day-to-day community, and I know that deeply affected him.
It's not that queer or trans people of color are any less prevalent than any other group of queer or trans people, just that the voices out there tend to be people who have higher privileges, either because they are cisgendered or white or straight or like a bunch of other intersecting identities. So
I think a lot of people still don't know the difference between sex and gender.
I think everyone's staring at me. Well, I'm trying to think of what the best way to describe it would be. I kind of use the old saying of like gender is who you go to bed as, and sexuality is who you go to bed with. And those are two different things. And then also gender identity and gender expression are very different. So just because somebody identifies as male doesn't necessarily mean that they will express themselves in what society would see to be as male. And I think it's really important to note that gender is a social construct, as well as sexual orientation. But I'm trying to think, do you want more elaboration on
Well, because you can't use the words, you shouldn't use the words like he was born a boy, like, or she was born a girl, and why is that? Why can't you use that language? Just for anyone who doesn't understand that.
Sex is often thought of as being biological, but it's sort of more what you are medically assigned at birth. So saying assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth is a lot less uncomfortable to various people.
I mean, it's offensive to say if you're...
Yeah, and I guess the real root is that there's a difference between like biological sex and gender. Is that biological sex is placed onto you at birth by, doctors and medical officials, and gender is something that happens at a later point when they start giving you boy clothes, for instance, or girl clothes, for instance. That's when you become gendered.
Can your gender change throughout your lifetime? I mean, if you're someone who's gender fluid, does that mean that sometimes you identify more with one gender than the other?
I identify as gender fluid, and I know some people who are gender fluid go between 2 genders or 3 genders. With me, I tend to fall. There's a pretty wide spectrum of genders. So with sort of more masculine genders over here, more feminine over here, depending on the day or sometimes on the hour, it'll fluctuate between those, and sometimes I will identify as neither biological gender or both biological genders or a gender entirely. I had sort of always known that I didn't quite fit the girl model, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I identified as because I didn't know that gender fluidity was an option. So instead of presenting how I felt differently on different days, I would stick to very neutral clothes and neutral activities almost overall, and so that I would be perceived as sort of more of a tomboy, because that's sort of what I thought the options were.
But how do you present if you're feeling one gender compared to another gender?
Now I tend to present the gender that I am identifying as at the moment, at least most of the time, since I tend to be in pretty safe spaces to do so. But there are times when I still don't feel comfortable doing that.
Just in public?
Yeah, in certain spaces.
I think that there is not a whole lot of information and awareness about like different labels that there are, like gender fluid and gender queer and agender. And so while those feelings of discomfort might have started really young, that journey of self-discovery might take years and years because there just isn't a whole lot of resources for somebody who is questioning their gender identity.
When did you start questioning your gender identity?
I think it started at a pretty early age, around like 3, but I didn't come out as transgender until I was around like 24 years old, and a lot of that had to do with just not feeling safe, and also all that I knew of transgender people were these kind of horrific, horrific sob stories in the media. One of the first transgender stories I had ever seen was like on Oprah, and it didn't seem like it was a very good life. So I think that definitely played into me like not feeling comfortable to come out for a very long time.
But then what pushed you to come out?
It was literally, I felt like I needed to live authentically, or I was going to harm myself or kill myself. It got that serious.
When you decided to commit, when you were like, okay, I'm gonna live authentically, did you have a support system around you?
I had friends, I had a few acquaintances that I knew that had transitioned, so at that time I kind of pulled them a little closer and just started experimenting with pronouns, and luckily my family was very accepting, and my friends were very accepting, so I had a very easy journey compared to most.
That kind of leads me to a discussion about depression, because I was reading somewhere that more than half of transgendered kids, at least, more than half think about suicide, and a little less than half have actually attempted it. Have any of you suffered from depression trying to live authentically?
I'm not sure how much of it for me personally has been because of gender identity or sexuality and not being able to be open about that, and how much of it is being predisposed to it, or I was always a very anxious child, so I think that's part of what led into it. But I think for some people it can definitely play a huge role, and I think it probably has played a role for me.
I think also the stigmas just surrounding depression really don't help people get treatment for it. Say if someone dies of cancer, you don't say, oh, well, they could have done something differently. But if someone commits suicide because of depression, it's treated very differently.
I think that it's hard enough as it is to be an adolescent, and having just, I guess, like depression from being a teenager it's a very real thing. And I think that when you play in other factors of identity, such as like race or being transgender, I think that definitely, magnifies depression.
I found quite a bit of support through friends and through GSA at my school, and a program called Teens Like Us through Planned Parenthood also.
Yeah, I received support just when I was questioning my sexual orientation, and also going through severe depression, just through friends, and also through the Gender Sexuality Alliance at my school was a good resource for me.
I think it's interesting because of Avi and Schuyler both transitioning. Did you notice anything when they were kids, when they were young kids?
Oh, yes. Avi said he is a tomboy. He doesn't like dresses, so he wanted to stick with boys' clothing, pants, and then not the dresses. About Skyler, when he was 8 or 9 years old, and he came to me with a sad face and told me that, Mom, I know this is my body, but I don't feel like I belong to this body. He mentioned a few times, and then I ignored that. I thought it was just a little girl's confusion. But when I think of that now, I feel like it was actually his gender identity. And then I'm really sorry that I didn't recognize when he was young, and then I couldn't support him.
I think it is really confusing, though, for parents to try to evaluate what their kids are going through, because you're kids, right? So you don't know if you're articulating it well as a child or if you're saying something. But Schuyler was pretty clear, right? So yes. I guess, is there any advice that you can give to parents, who might be in the same situation that you were in years ago?
Now, because of Schuyler, I learned a lot. I didn't know what a transgender feel like in their real life, and then what kind of pressure, what kind of isolation they have. I had no clue, but now I understand it. And then I want to try to understand and then feel their pain and pressure. And then I want to support them. I want to share their pain, and then I want to advocate for them. And then I want to reach out to the families who has no understanding about their children, because I was in that situation before, and I lost my child for that. And still, Abby is here with us. I'm grateful that I have Abby, so we can continue Skylar's work.
Do you feel like you're always fighting for rights?
We're advocating for things that are just basic human rights, like the right to use the bathroom. And as a trans activist, I get tired of talking about bathrooms when there's so many other things that my community needs. You can still get fired for being trans. The process to change your name, the process to find a proper doctor, and not even necessarily to prescribe you hormones, but just to be aware, to be, sensitive to the fact that your body may be different or you may identify differently. It's terrifying to think that I have to go into an emergency room and have to explain my gender identity to someone and not know how they're going to react to that. All these things are things that weigh on your mind every day, and they are just, very, very simple things.
Right, a lot of people take it for granted. When is it a good time to start transitioning? Is there ever a too early of a time? And then also, how does that happen that Schuyler was able to get testosterone without your knowledge?
When he wants to use testosterone because it is who he is, he needs it. And then I didn't accept him as who he is, so I didn't meet his need at that time. He was desperate, so friend tried to help him. I understand it, but when I saw the buyer in the bathroom, then I recognized, okay, I cannot ignore this matter anymore, because he really wants it. Then he has to get his hormone injection in safe way. That's why I signed after he requested that hormone therapy 1.5 years before.
But how did he get it?
To get the testosterone under certain age, they have to have the guardian or parent signature, and the endocrinologist didn't have it, so they couldn't provide it. So he got from somewhere friend in, not safe way.
Okay.
I understand the desperate need of Schuyler, but finally I signed it, and then it was every 2-week injection, and then he had only 3 times. I'm really sorry about that to Schuyler, that I didn't meet his need on time.
I remember when Schuyler told me that he was getting testosterone injections from a friend who was also trans. And I was scared for him because I knew that I thought that this was unsafe. And I just remember him telling me, Eileen, I can't wait. I can't wait until I'm 18. I can't live in this body for another 3 years. I've got to do something about it. It's like Orion was saying about that choice to live authentically before, things get really bad. You do something to harm yourself, which I guess it did happen.
But Schuyler did not commit suicide because Schuyler was trans. Schuyler committed suicide because he was depressed.
And I think that's a very important distinction to make, and that's one of the things that I feel like the media can paint this very easily as, another trans teen commits suicide, and that whole sentence just implies that, being transgender is a death sentence, when it's not. There are hundreds, thousands of trans adults who are living happy, healthy lives. Schuyler was not a victim to being transgender. He was a victim to his mental illness.
Is it the depression of not feeling accepted? Do you think it was the depression that maybe he couldn't communicate with his mother? Did he ever talk about, some of the things that bothered him that made him depressed?
I think that it's a little bit of both. I think that we can't negate the fact that I think his identity did play a role in his mental wellness. And I think that Schuyler was very, very brilliant and could understand the hardships, especially right now with all the stuff going on with, race here in Madison, and also what's going on with the transgender community. He was very aware of systemic oppression. And I think that a lot of the talks that we had dealt around his fear of growing up and being an adult activist, essentially advocating for basic human rights, where he did not feel that he was treated equally, and that was very depressing for him.
Yeah.
It was a harsh reality.
Going back to what you were saying earlier about, is there ever too too soon of a time to transition. I know a lot of parents, that's a concern that, oh, they're too young to make the decision. But that's why they have hormone blockers that you can start taking before you enter puberty that basically stop you from going through what you feel is the wrong puberty and give you maybe a couple more years even to decide. And so then they're not, 9, 10, 11 making the decision. And it's not that they can't make the decision at 9, 10, 11. It's just that parents and professionals may feel more comfortable with them making the decision after a couple more years and maybe after getting therapy and discussing the issue. And if they still identify that way, then going through alternate hormone therapy.
Did you talk to your parents about being gender fluid?
I actually did fairly recently. And I can tell that they have good intentions about it, but they sort of don't know how to talk about it or what to say and what not to say, how to refer to me. And so it's kind of been hard to deal with that, but I'm also really fortunate that they have been so accepting of my gender identity and of my sexuality.
I do think that's something that we're seeing a little bit more of, about parents trying, just nationally, that parents are trying to understand and be supportive, but I think they probably need some guidance.
I still have a hard time correcting people. Sometimes I feel bad about correcting people when it really should be, like, if it was for anyone else, I would say that it's just a basic human right to be referred to as how you identify, but somehow when it's reflected back on me, I have trouble seeing that same perspective.
What pronouns should we use for a gender fluid person? Or for you? I mean,
yeah,
what pronouns
so
should
for
we use?
me, my pronouns change, but I'm always fine with they, them, theirs, or other neutral pronoun sets, because I feel like they just don't gender me, and so whatever gender I identify as currently, I'm okay with that.
Is homelessness still an issue? I know that Schuyler kind of moved out for a while, right? So, I mean, is that an issue? Depression is an issue. I think homelessness might be another issue.
Fortunately, Skyler has a friend, so he can stay in their house for 2 months because we didn't understand him at the time, and then Skyler was depressed at home with us because we don't accept him as who he was. But when they become homeless, the problem is they can be a victim of physical and sexual abuse because they have no place to go.
There are quite a few states where you can be denied housing because of your gender identity. So not only do they maybe not have the financial means or whatnot to have housing or support from family or friends, but they can be kicked out if they come out.
Is Wisconsin one of those states? I don't know, actually.
I believe it's voted from county to county, but there's no
okay.
blanketed law in Wisconsin that says that gender identity is covered.
Have any of you had any friends who've been kicked out of their house?
I mean, I've faced homelessness due to, roommates finding out that I was, transgender. Luckily, I have a great support system with my family, and I'm able to stay with them and friends. But there were multiple occasions where I was, essentially denied housing or fired and not able to, maintain housing.
I would like to kind of go through some vocabulary. Are you guys okay with that? What does cisgender mean?
It's a person that identifies with their assigned birth gender.
Gender fluid.
I know I explained a little earlier, but it's where your gender identity fluctuates. It can be over any period of time. So it can be over years, it can be over days, it can be hour to hour, but somewhere along the spectrum to at least 2 different points.
Transgender.
Transgender would refer to a person whose gender identity does not align with the sex and gender that they were assigned to be at birth.
Pangender.
Like the transgender is an umbrella term.
Okay.
And so pangender kind of falls under that in the sense that it's somebody that can identify with multiple gender identities and multiple gender expressions.
Okay. Non-binary.
When people tend to think of gender, they think of the gender binary. So you can be a girl or you can be a boy. And non-binary just means any time that your gender identity falls outside of those two little check boxes and somewhere else on a spectrum or off the spectrum entirely.
Queer.
Somebody whose sexuality also aligns with the politics of, I'm trying to think of like how I would describe the politics of queer.
Depends on what you mean by politics.
With words that you're sort of unsure whether or not to use. Use them if people identify as such, and don't use them if you haven't heard them say that they claim that as part of their identity.
I feel like if you question anything, you probably just shouldn't say it. Do you know what I mean?
I think for some people in the community, they use queer as a term to describe themselves. At least for me, I use the term queer to describe myself because I don't feel like my sexual orientation falls under categories like lesbian or bisexual or pansexual. So I use the word queer because it feels right to me, because I identify as something other than straight. I'm just not totally sure what that is, so I do use the word queer to describe myself.
I think you said something that just made me think, just to make sure with the community, that people in the community watching this and listening to this, is that you don't have to be totally sure in your identity. You don't have to say like, I'm this way. Right. I mean, it can change.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through a myriad of labels and I'm still searching.
We all are in some way. I wanted some meaningful, thoughtful conversations on Facebook and on Twitter. So I asked some, are people born transgender like gays and lesbians often believe they were?
Well, you're born sort of without a concept of gender. So I think that a lot of people are, from a very young age, are transgender or identify that way.
Are transgender people gay?
Not always, but sometimes.
Someone wrote, I think parenting would be hard because there are decisions about hormone use that may need to be decided when the child is a minor but will impact their entire life. And we've kind of talked about this. But how do doctors and professionals help parents when or when not to begin these treatments?
Transgender doesn't always equate to medical transition, and I think that that's something that is often talked a lot about in the media right now around transgender lives, is the fact that medical transition is something that people are really fixating on, but having a trans child doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to even want to medically transition at all. So I think that that's a big, misconception. There's many different ways to identify and many different ways to transition, or maybe even not transition. Okay. Maybe just socially transition, but maybe not medically transition. So there's a lot of different types of transitioning.
Do you think doctors are good at knowing that? I mean, saying, I think it's time to maybe do hormone therapy, or maybe we shouldn't do hormone therapy. Are doctors versed in that, do you think, with parents?
I honestly don't think that they are. Okay. I think that it's still operating, that the transgender community is still operating in a binary, meaning that they are trying to still fix children. So they're still trying to they think that transition, a medical transition might be the answer, but that may not necessarily be the case. I think that there still needs to be money that's allocated to researching to researching gender identity and to researching the impacts of hormone replacement therapy on youth as well as adults. There still hasn't really been a lot of talk around that.
We need to find the doctors and medical professionals who understand these transgender children, because the regular practitioners, doctors sometimes they don't understand this. It will take a time, but medical professionals now needs to be retrained for how to take care of transgender children and youth.
I'm sure the hormone therapy is expensive.
2 injections is $100.
How many injections do you?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Yes.
For how long?
I mean, as long as they want.
Yeah, it's cheaper on the whole healthcare system and on the whole insurance system to pay for, one little vial of hormones rather than years of mental health treatment. So really, if you're comfortable with cisgender children making the decision at that age to carry on with puberty, it should go both ways.
We've had such a great discussion. I want to give you guys the opportunity to have any last thoughts. For anyone who might be watching or listening, what do you hope they take away from our conversation?
I think that if you're watching this and you're cisgender, you should really just take a moment to just appreciate the privilege that you have. Just not constantly the fear of like being misgendered or being called by the wrong name or things about bathrooms, just like acknowledging your privilege and like acknowledging the struggles that transgender people go through, definitely.
And furthermore, like listening to and amplifying the voices of transgender people, because cisgender people hold so much privilege, and they take that privilege, we take that privilege into the spaces with us, and it's really important to listen to transgender people when they are telling you about their experiences.
It's time that we show our trans youth that we support them, and not just say that we support them, and support them while they're alive. And I think that we often talk about them too late, and they've been asking us and telling us, they've been showing us what they need. And as adults, I really think that it's time that we step up and we honor that.
Whether or not you see role models that match your identities or your intersectionality of identities, there are people out there who identify the same or similarly to you, and there is support, and you may not always be able to access it or find it easily, but it is out there, and once you find it, it's so helpful.
Can I talk about the bathroom bill quick?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, Schuyler once mentioned that he doesn't know which bathroom he has to go. He has to go to girls' bathroom, but he is not comfortable at all. Sometimes he doesn't go to the bathroom at all. So I'm asking politicians and the lawmakers, please don't make a binary for the bathroom for the transgender children. They are young, and then they have to go to bathroom. That's a human right. Their life is precious. Please let them choose.
Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time, and I really admire your honesty and just really helping other people in the community, and I hope we keep this conversation going as well. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.